So when the student thinks about the energy bus, they're thinking about, okay, this is fun. This is engaging. This is different than my academics. Oh, and it's also helping me think about my positive mental health. And then you have the teachers who are doing their own side work with the energy bus, learning about the rules themselves as a staff, but then being able to teach it to the students. So they're getting to know their students on a really personal level, and then they're able to share some of these things. And then most importantly, they're bringing it home.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast. I'm your host, James McLamb. And if you are a member of our community and you were a part of the summit this past summer, you're going to remember this guy that we have as our guest today, Dr. Jim Van Allen. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Good to be here, James. Love being on the show. Love being part of the summit. Excited to have some great conversations with you here.
Well, I have been able to interview a lot of friends of yours over the time, and several of them, specifically Petra, kept telling me, hey, you got to reach out to Jim. You got to reach out to Jim. So I'm glad that we've been able to connect. So if you wouldn't mind, our audience would love to hear about you from you. So if you wouldn't mind, take a few minutes and introduce yourself to the Generation Youth audience.
Absolutely. So I am John Gordon's president of the Energy Bus for Schools program, and we give schools the blueprint and the framework to create a positive school culture and energize teachers and empower students. We are culture builders at schools. So we have a program that allows schools to use principles from John's best-selling book, The Energy Bus, on their school, in their classrooms. There it is, The Energy Bus. Hey, look, I got mine too. Always got mine nearby. And I also am a best-selling author of, you can hold this one up too, James, The Energy Bus for Schools book, which is the long-awaited follow-up to The Energy Bus. So obviously everybody knows The Energy Bus has been around for almost 18 years. And I was fortunate enough to write the follow-up called The Energy Bus for Schools, which basically takes readers through many, many stories. We'll talk more about the book, but just stories on how people have built culture in their schools using the Energy Bus and using our program. So it's a story-driven book. And that work has allowed me to do is speak all around the country, to schools, to districts, every type of school audience you can imagine, from cafeteria workers to transportation to paraprofessionals, everybody I've been in front of, students, pre-K, 12th grade, everybody, admins. And so I travel all around the country and I speak throughout the entire year. Obviously, July through September is extremely busy.
Yeah.
But now it's starting to pick up. We're having a little bit more throughout the rest of the year, a lot of virtual engagements. And I'm actually headed to China in a week and a half to speak to a school we have there. I know.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is. Yes. So I'll be there on middle of October, say early October this year. They are an Energy Bus certified school. We have a school over there. They're an international school. So they have a lot of many, they speak English there, and they have a lot of Americans who work there. So the language barrier is not going to be a problem, but they're an Energy Bus school. They're in our program. They're using our material. And they said, we want to bring you out and have you speak to all these various groups of part of the school for the next 3 days in October. So I love to speak. That's first and foremost. Run the Energy Bus for Schools program, wrote the best-selling book, and we have the podcast as well called The Energy Bus for Schools out as well, which we just trying to pump out as much positive stories and strategies and information to our principals and our school leaders and teachers as possible throughout the year.
Why did you get passionate about this? I mean, this book, John's original book, is amazing. Besides the fact there's a bus on the cover, but it's not a school bus, but there's a bus on the cover. How did you make the connection? Hey, this needs to be a part of school. So why?
So, the Energy Bus book has been part of my life since it was a Word document. A lot of people don't know that, but I saw the Energy Bus when it was a Word document when I was interning for John. I started out as his intern. I reached out to him one night. I was a student at the University of Florida, and I was still passionate about being a speaker. But I was in a major that wasn't really leading me down that path, right? So still trying to make it in that path, though, public relations, and I had an internship. And the people at the internship had just seen John speak. This is before he had written the Energy Bus. He was only an hour and a half from our campus. And they said, Jim, we saw this guy speak. He reminds us of you. We know you want to be a speaker. You should email him. So I said, I'll say, so I him and ha, and I emailed him because nobody likes rejection, right? And I just said, I'd love to be a speaker and learn from you. Some friends of mine had seen you speak. He wrote me back and he gave me a cell phone. And talked the next day. We talked for 2 hours, and he basically handed me a handshake internship on the spot, right? August 2006. And he's like, hey, I
Wow.
have this book I'm trying to get published. Read it, check it out. It's a Word doc of the Energy Bus. So I was hooked from day one. I said, I want to be part of this. And then as he grew, he started getting more and more requests coming in and for speaking engagements. And of course, schools were on that list. And he would say, Jim, can you go speak here for me? I can't go. Jim, can you go speak here? I can't go. And it was just schools. And it was schools. And I was doing companies and some businesses, but started doing a lot more school stuff. And I started really liking that atmosphere and that
Mm.
environment. And more importantly, I think the impact I knew the material was having and I was having as a speaker. I'm like, I can really help these folks grow and have a better mindset and work together stronger and put strategies in place. I can teach you how to use the rules from the Energy Bus book in your life and in your school and with your students. And I think that's my why. I jived well with that audience, right? I love teachers. I love admins. I can walk into a bank and teach them too, but just something about educators.
Yeah.
They're so much fun. They're so passionate. They're so
That is my
ambitious.
preferred audience too. So I know
That's where I want to
exactly
work.
what you're saying.
Yep.
Uh,
That's where I want to work.
I
That's my
yeah, I
niche.
love being in that audience. It's a fun audience. They're energized. I love doing that. So how did this end up being?
The
Tell
Energy
us
Bus for
why that.
Schools.
Yeah.
So, obviously, so that book didn't come out until this year, right? March of
Hmm.
24. But between March of 24 and February of '07, when the Energy Bus came out, that's a long time. And we had so many schools reading the original Energy Bus book and just using it to build their culture up. And then John and I started the Energy Bus for Schools program because we had so many schools reading this book and then being like, okay, we read it. Now what do? We want to do more. So we created the Energy Bus for Schools program, which gave them classroom activities to do, campus activities to do, monthly coaching on how to use Energy Bus rules on your campus and with your students. So now we have the program. So we have people who read the book, are inside of our program now, building culture, doing amazing things, really doing turnarounds and engaging with their students and staff in remarkable ways and sharing their stories with us. And John and I came together and we said, we have to write this book, right? We have to write the blueprint. We want to give schools a blueprint on really how to build culture well. And that's how the Energy Bus for Schools book came to be. It's a collection of stories and strategies on how schools have built great culture using our program and using the book and just sharing stories and strategies all throughout. So anybody can pick it up and they can put it down, read it, right? And have, 20 strategies they could do the next day. So that's why we wrote it, because we wanted to share more with schools out there.
So what is in it? I mean, I know what's in this one. I've read it. I actually have the workbook that goes along with it. That was it Amy Kelly who wrote the
Correct.
the
Yes.
workbook that we've had on the show before. A good friend of the program and an Ignite presenter as well.
Right.
So I have that. So what's in this that's different than that? Why? Why would a school need to go to that direction besides the fact that it's got a school on the title?
Basically, what we did is we reimagined the original book. The Energy Bus book has 10 rules to fuel your life, work, and team with positive energy, right? So what we did is we reimagined those 10 rules into 7 we sort of combined some and just sort of streamlined it a little bit. And you would pick up the Energy Bus for Schools book because you're looking at ways that you can improve your culture and your leadership, and you can bring people together and have actionable strategies to do that. So you read the Energy Bus for Schools book because you want strategies, you want ideas. You're like, how do I engage better with faculty? We have a section on that. How do I empower my students to build culture inside of the school? We have a section on that. Loving your passengers. How do you have better relationships on campus? How do you set a vision on campus? What's the importance of sharing that? We share so many stories about how schools have done that and reinforced it. So it's a strategy book. It's a case study book. It's one where, like I said, you pick it up and you read it and you put it down. You have all these ideas that you can implement right away, easily explained and proof of concept. We know they work. So that's sort of how they're linked, right? The Energy Bus book is the original story about how George, main character, right, experienced a transformation, became a triumph, became a hero for his family and his work. And what he learned along the way. And then the one that John and I wrote is strategies on how schools can use the original Energy Bus principles to help build their culture.
Well, give us examples of some of that, because I speak to a lot of schools. Our mutual friend Tammy and I did a school system this summer together, and we speak to a lot of school systems, and we talk to them some about culture. But I feel like this probably dives into it a whole lot better than we are, because we're looking at something a little bit niche when we go in and speak. This though can really ignite. So how does it work? How are schools implementing or school systems implementing?
What they're doing basically is whether they're in the Energy Bus program or not, they
Hmm.
can pick up the book and still have a formula on how to do it. So what they're doing is they're focusing on a few Energy Bus rules at a time separately. Okay, so one might be create a positive vision. One might be fuel your ride with positive energy. And one might be no bullying allowed, no energy vampires allowed. One could be love your passengers, enjoy the ride. So take those five, for example. And one at a time, they're using that rule on campus and they're saying, hey, we're going to be all about create a positive vision these next 8 weeks. And then what they're doing is each week, right, they are more or less, they're doing activities that reinforce that rule they're camping on. So during the create a positive vision time, they're going to read the Energy Buster Schools book and they're going to say, oh, wow, look what this school did. They created a huge mural of a school bus. And each part of that mural is somebody's one word, right? So we
Hmm.
like to do one word a lot, where students and
Yeah.
staff, one word, right? One word vision. And if you look at, and I have pictures in the book of this, it's a school bus, but if you look closer, it's everybody on the campus is one word in the shape of a school bus. It's remarkable. So you walk by that and hey, we are sharing a positive vision. We're seeing everybody's vision there. So a lot of our schools are actively doing things like that, where they're putting things on the walls that they're creating inside the classrooms that have to do with that rule they're camping on. So love your passengers, right? We have some campuses that will do, that's one of the Energy Bus rules. But an activity for that is like Christmas garland that kind of links together. They'll write
Yeah.
one positive note to somebody and they'll link it together, they'll staple it, and they'll create these streamers across campus that have positive sayings and notes to people on campus that are going through the classroom, that are going through the halls. And that could be 1 week's activity, right? That could be week four's activity where they are doing that. So we like seeing our schools be active in the process. We like seeing them doing the activities that are in our book, but are also inside the program if they're inside the program. And like I said, a lot of schools are just doing things on their own. They're like, hey, what can we do for no bullying allowed? Well, let's create an anti-bullying pledge. Let's create that as a campus or as a classroom. Let's all sign it. Let's hang it up. And let's share it at our assembly, right? So that we all understand, hey, there's no bullying allowed here, right? And we've all signed their name to that. So I love seeing the activities come alive.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking about those activities. I spent 8 years in the classroom, and I was thinking of someone coming in and trying to sell this to a school, giving a presentation at the first day. Those teachers in the room who are doing this number, they're like, I ain't buying into this. So how do you get buy-in to that teacher who's like, you're wasting my time. I need to be in my classroom. I don't need to be in this kind of, because they're there. Every school has them. If a principal were to say, "Oh, I don't have any of those. All my teachers are buying in," then they're kind of naive, because they're in every single school. So how are we going to convince Mister Reluctance? I'm not going to say that they're you know vampires that they need to be kicked off the bus. They're skeptics. How are we going to convince these skeptics that this is not just a bunch of kumbaya, let's celebrate and dance? Because to be honest, a lot of that happens. You get people from central office, they come in, they give you all this rah rah, and then all the teachers look at each other when they leave and they go, that was worthless. So, how are we going to convince them that this can better their lives? Really, what's in it for them?
And I love those teachers. A great question. I love those teachers. I love being introduced to them. And I love hearing stories about how they get transformed. And the difference here is that if you have central office coming by, and I've been in many convocations where the superintendent, somebody gets up before me and goes on for 45 minutes about, yeah, let's get going here, right? And then I got to come up. So I've been part of that. I know. But the difference here is that the Energy Bus for Schools program is a year-long experience for a school. It's
Ooh.
not like you just have a one and done professional development where we talk about the Energy Bus, then you don't do anything with it. And so that helps teachers to know that there you can trust this program. It's going to be in your school for hopefully past a year. Okay. But the other part of it is I always do, one-on-one calls with my principals or wherever I'm going to speak. And I ask about their staff and things like that. And I say, listen, if you have a few, and usually it's just a few, two, three that are not Mr. or Mrs. Reluctant, as you put it, right? So I always tell these principals, go to these people one-on-one. Like there's research from the Harvard Business Review that shows the power of one-on-one
Hmm.
relationships. Go to these people and just invite them personally to be part of this program, right? That's number one. But number two, try to understand as a principal, as a leader, why is this person feeling that way? Why are they feeling like they don't want to be part of this? Why are they feeling like they have to put up a wall? And you don't have to plow through that wall with a wrecking ball, right? But you need to, as a principal, I would go to these people and say, what's going on? Like, why do you feel this way? Like, and they may be like, oh, I've been at other schools. They brought a program in and then it didn't, and they did nothing with it. Or what if you're just going to
Yeah.
leave in 3 months? So they may not say that in a staff meeting, but certainly on a one-on-one, a private conversation, you can break down some barriers and get through to them that way. So I prefer my school leaders go to people one-on-one. I just think it's like calling somebody instead of texting them, right? You call somebody and you can figure out your plans, blah, 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 in probably 2 minutes. Okay. And you can back texting, you're adding your own tone and perception, and it can go on and on and on, and the text won't go through. And like just cut through it all, go to that person and invite them. Number one, we write about in the book, invite staff to be on the bus. Not only should you do that group wise, but one-on-one with people who you know could be an issue. And then you break through to them. And then if they have a specific role to play in building culture, you need to find out what their strength is, what their area is, how they can help. And you assign that out to them. You delegate out to them. You give them a job to do in the culture building process. And then at least you've CYA, right? You've covered yourself in trying to extend that olive branch to them. And at the end of the year, they decide they don't want to be part of it anymore. That's on them. You've done everything possible to help them to come into the flow of the energy bus, come into the flow of the campus, help support it. But not everybody is meant to ride your bus. And I tell principals all the time, that's okay, right? It's okay. You tried, you gave them a whole year. It may not work out all the time in the end. And that's sad, but it's a reality.
Yeah, it is a reality that some just they're just not the right fit. You're not the right fit in that place, and it would be the administration's job to help them find a place to be successful. After I left the classroom and I owned some companies, there when we had to part with someone, as I grew in my ability to be in charge of that company, I would bring someone in and say, "I need to help you find somewhere where you're going to be happy and successful," which was my way of saying, You're about to be fired, and let me help you exit the door in the nicest way possible." Instead of just saying, "You're not working out, you're out of here." All right, I got a lot of friends who are principals that I'd love to connect to this, but they're going to say, "You don't know how many programs we get emailed or mailed or get calls about that is promising the same thing. Where's the proof in the pudding?" So, what are some examples of how this has worked in some schools? How's it turned them around? What's it doing besides, because I'm sure there are going to be skeptical principals. They're like, "I don't have time for this unless it really can make a difference."
Love it. So I have a new school that joined this year in Oklahoma, and they are a K-12 building.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And just
There's not many
and
of those left in the nation.
No, there's not, right? They're one building, right? So I do a coaching call with all my schools every month. So that's one big thing, right? It's not just a program, it's a community we're trying to build. We have a private Facebook group where people are sharing things they're doing on their campuses. It's very active. We have a coaching call every month where we all get together and share. So this last coaching call, one of the principals of a K-12 said, her high schoolers were coming up to her because in those small buildings, they all know each other, right? And I wrote it down because I'm like, I have to remember this, right? And the high schooler says, it just feels different this year here on campus and we like it. Like a few of them were telling her that just feels different. So you're getting that from the students. And I had a middle school in Kentucky, Mount Washington, one of my favorite energy bus schools. They polled their students and they said, tell us how you're feeling about the program and the energy bus, kind of quiz them a little bit. What are you learning? And if you looked in the Energy Bus for Schools book, I published that survey. I published the
Mm.
student responses to what they said in the book. Those were not edited, maybe just for spelling, right? But the students were coming up honestly with honest responses and saying, this has helped us have a more positive mindset. We have better relationships with each other. I know how to handle negativity, right? I'm having fun on campus. I enjoy doing the activities. So
Wow.
I like to go to the students as my proof of concept and say they're the ones who enjoy it the most. They do a great job. I have, I've talked about a high school and middle school. I have elementary schools that were probably 65% elementary schools because the whole bus theme just plays well there, right? You can be campy and fun and silly with it. And I have a school up in New York, Central Boulevard, who does an amazing job with assemblies. I mean, they're getting people together. They're doing conga lines in the cafeteria. They're doing skits for each energy bus rule. They dress up in costume. They have WWE style entrances for a teacher bringing up an energy bus rule. They're making it fun. So when the student thinks about the energy bus, they're thinking about, okay, this is fun. This is engaging. This is different than my academics. Oh, and it's also helping me think about my positive mental health. And then you have the teachers who are doing their own side work with the energy bus, learning about the rules themselves as a staff, but then being able to teach it to the students. So they're getting to know their students on a really personal level. And then they're able to share some of these things. And then most importantly, they're bringing it home.
Mm.
They're bringing it home to their families. One teacher came up to me. Her daughter was a student at her school, right? The mom was being negative, right? And the daughter is like, Mom, like, you're not riding the energy bus today. So that's when like it's working because it's getting home as well. So if you're thinking about this and you're skeptical, this is a community. This isn't a program. It's a community. It's an experience. I like those terms better because it is. And it doesn't just stay within the walls of your school. I want all my families to bring this home to their own families. Talk about what it means to fuel your ride with positive energy. Talk about mindset. Talk
Mhm.
about loving our passengers and loving others. Enjoying the ride, right? Not complaining first, but looking for the good first. So you can take the rules, the energy bus rules, and use them in great conversations at home too. So it's this all encompassing thing. And you're doing it because you have one sole reason. You want to be a more positive campus. That's it, right? That's your number one reason for wanting to be an energy bus school or picking up the book is you're sitting there saying, we could use some more positivity here. We may disagree on how schools are run or this or that, but we can certainly agree on one single thing. And that is we need to be a positive school. I don't care who you are on that campus, top to bottom, left, right, whoever you are. I truly believe everybody can agree on that. And it's hard to get people to agree on one singular thing, especially in this
Yeah.
country now, right? But in schools, I would say that singular thing is positivity for sure.
Yeah, I like the concept of too that it's a holistic approach. We're not just talking about creating a culture with the administration of the school or just the teachers, but it's going to bleed all the way into the students and every filter it with classroom support staff, custodial staff, all the staff is involved in this, plus the school as the students as well. So it's everybody is buying into this, and that's exciting to think about and to visualize.
And I've had, I do a lot of staff workshops, right, at
Hmm.
schools. And I love the teacher principal be like, who should come to this? Should it just be the teachers? And I say, no. I said, bring everybody. Like bring your support staff, bring your paras, bring your front office. I've had custodians in the room, right?
Oh yeah, you can
Because I
need
tell
those are the most important people in the school.
Oh, they are. Oh my gosh, especially everybody I just said, right? Like front office, paraprofessionals, custodians. And I say, you are the backbone of this school. You are the front line. You are on the ground. You are with these individual students. And I say, custodians, I say, listen, you may not be in a classroom, but you get more face time with these students than anybody. Like you get to you get to still build relationships and you can still reinforce the energy bus by having good relationships with kids and smiling and having great nonverbals. And some of them keep little candy in their cart and like they have fun with the kids. So I think that's it's everybody. It really is. And that's the beauty of the program.
Outcomes that can be measured because in the academic world that's an important stick. We got to have measurement. So are we seeing better grades? Are we seeing better test scores? What are we seeing? Attendance? Are there evidence of that?
I try to have our schools establish a baseline from last year and then get your numbers on attendance, referral rates, detention.
Hi.
Um,
I hadn't thought about referral rates. Yeah.
yeah, some test score ish, even though I don't want to get into that world too much. But I had Rocky Mount Elementary in Virginia come back to me and said that they had the highest attendance they've ever had last year, and their referral like in trouble rates were down by about 18, 19% from 22, 23 to 23, 24 when they were in Energy Bus School
Mhm.
last year, and they're in the program again this year. So that was one example of somebody sharing data with me about how it's impacting, those types of numbers. And that's powerful to see because I do believe there is correlation between if everybody's working towards a singular goal and you build this community like atmosphere, you kind of hold each other accountable
Right.
to behavior. And if you're a student, like you want to be there, if you're staff, you really want to be there. You're not trying to blow a day off. Like you want to be part of what, anything, something good is happening, you want to be part of that, right? You want to be part of something good. So we are seeing some rates come back, and those are the measurables. So, like I said, those are the measurables, especially in the behavior side, and the big one too is attrition on the teacher side.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought about that measurement.
I mean, and now listen, not everything, you can't make a direct line to Energy Bus for Schools and teacher attrition, right? Because there's a lot of other factors in
Yeah.
play based on pay, retirement, just people getting promoted, things like that.
Life.
However,
Just
you can measure it with a lot. Listen, the number one thing why teachers and people in workplaces now are leaving workplaces or leaving jobs now, according to the HR Business Review, is a toxic workplace caused by colleagues. Right, that's number
mhm.
one reason why people are leaving. So if you can eliminate a toxic workplace, a toxic school environment caused by other colleagues, you'll eliminate a whole big reason why people would leave. So now you're keeping people at this school longer. Okay, and they why on earth would you do a lateral move somewhere else to another school in the district or the next district over? Same job, third grade to third grade, maybe a small bump here or decrease here in pay, whatever it is. Why would you on earth would you do that when you can be at a true destination location, which is your current
Yeah.
school? So that's what we're trying to help schools do too, is the more amazing and you can make your school culture, why on earth would anybody want to leave there? Besides other reasons, like I mentioned, for nothing else, you're not going to do any more lateral moves. You're going to stay there, you're going to grow, you're going to build because you enjoy coming to work every single day. And you don't want to go anywhere else. You want to build and grow and engage there.
And I love what you said earlier when you were sharing the story about a student going home and just taking that concepts that they've learned and trying to help their family. It bleeds into the family system. That's exciting on a whole nother level because that's one of those unmeasurable benefits that you can see and feel, but you can't really, you can't track it really, but it's happening.
And that's the big thing about me. Like, I respect data, I use it, but I'm not hyper focused on it because of what I just told you, too. What one of the high schoolers told one of my new high school principals. Like, it just feels different
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
And
How do
we
you measure a feeling? Yeah.
can't, right? So you have to, as a staff, as a central office, as a school admin, you just have to be present, walk around, look at student nonverbals, look at engagement in clubs, look at engagement in the energy bus activities, look at them, most importantly, wanting to take this and make it their own and say, having staff and students come up to you as a leader and say, hey, we love energy bus. What else can we do with it? Can we come up with some ideas? Can we help run the assembly? Can we start a student advisory
Mhm.
club on energy bus? So when you start seeing others around you grassroots this thing,
Are they doing that? Are students coming and saying we want to do a student advisory committee on the
yeah,
energy bus?
that's been the
So
new
cool.
that's been the new wave this year on the elementary and the middle and the high level both, is that students are creating these energy bus clubs, which are basically helping to run the assemblies on campus, the energy bus assemblies. Looking at the activities guides we give them and saying, you know what, let's change this, let's add our own here or there. And I love that. I think that's when like I said, when it goes home and when you have grassroots type thing, it's really working well.
Wow. How can they find out more information and how can they get started?
I'm the guy. So you look at that website up there, energybusforschools.com. I love to interact with every inquiry that comes in. You will get me, you will get to talk to me, you'll get to email with me, and I will happy to have a conversation. And number one, make sure it's a great fit for your school,
Hmm.
making sure that you do see projected, not just buy-in, but that there's people, they're ripe for a culture change, or you're a school that's doing really well and you want to maintain that momentum. So energybusforschools.com, and there's links on there that you can get in touch with me, request more information. Those come right to my email. They come right to me. I reach right back out and we'll schedule a conversation with you to make sure it's a good fit. And I can kind of outline the parameters of the program and go through that stuff. And I love connecting people with people inside the program who are doing it really well. I have some all-star schools that are more than willing to share a reference to somebody who's like, hey, I want to talk to somebody who's actually doing this. No problem. Like I'll give you a principal's email. You can set up a time to talk with them. Don't just hear it from me, hear from somebody. And I won't even tell my schools that I'm submitting their name as a reference, right? They know that they're on the cut, that I can do that, but I won't go to that school and be like, hey, John's going to call you, give us a good reference. I let my schools, boast about the program in their own words and unprompted, and they've done a great job with that.
This is exciting information. Ironically, there was a school that I went to the day of development this past spring, and hung out. That was in Charlotte, and hung out with John and Amy and Julie and Thomas. And there was a school right next in the table next to me whose superintendent was a good friend of mine. He actually was the last student teacher that I had before I stopped teaching. So,
Uh,
and now he's superintendent at that school system. So I got to connect with them. And then Tammy and I did a workshop for that school system this summer. And when I was talking to that principal, there were two principals there. When I was talking to them that were at the day of development, they actually, we were connecting with them the beginning of June. You know what they were doing in 2 weeks at the end of June? They were coming to see you in Charlotte.
oh
So
yeah,
they were there. So I don't know if
yeah,
there was a Harnett County and your elementary. I don't know if they were.
yeah. I remember.
Uh,
I remember the scene. Their placard. Yeah, totally, totally.
So I know that there, works. I know the concepts work. And is there anywhere that they can follow you online? Can they reach out to you and see what's happening as well?
Absolutely. Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, what is this Twitter thing you just said? I don't know what that
I know,
is.
what is that? And I still call it Twitter. I know. At Energy Bus School, at Energy Bus Schools as well. That would be a great way of. We're always trying to retweet and share what our schools are doing, especially on our Facebook page. Schools are always submitting pictures to us of just stuff that they're doing that making their campus
Hmm.
come alive, and I share it on my own stuff as well. So you can look at me at Jim Van Allan, VANALLAN, on all those platforms as well. So yes, please come get a glimpse into what it means to be an energy bus school for sure.
Well, Jim, thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this, for taking this concepts and being able to put this in the schools to get that vibe of the school different. Hey, it feels different. I love that statement. That's marketing right there. Hey, it just
Totally.
feels different.
That's why I wrote
I
it
love
down.
it. That's great. And audience, I want to thank you for sticking with us. Look, if you stayed with us for almost 40 minutes, you found some value in what you heard. So we'd really love to hear back from you on this. And I know for a fact some of you there listening are part of your local school's PTSA because you've given me feedback. And maybe your school system is not hearing this. Either share this episode with them or share the contact information for the Energy Buffer schools with them. Find out more and see if this can be brought to your schools because you want to make a positive environment. And I love the idea of it trickling back to families. That excites me probably as much as anything does. That. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. It's such an amazing program.
I love doing it. I love my work. I love working with schools. So thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, audience, again. And we'll see you again very soon on another episode.